How's it going, my Saab friends? My name is Gary and this is my channel Weakest of Weeks. If you're a first time viewer, I appreciate you clicking on the video and definitely consider subscribing, especially if you're into Saab related how-to videos. I have a ton of them out there, and today is, well, spoiler alert, it is another sort of how-to one, not as in-depth as some of my other ones, but I didn't plan to go work in the garage. I'm actually just getting over from being sick. It's cold outside, probably even colder in the garage, kind of like a cave. However, there's one thing that's been driving me nuts about this red Aero that I just want to take a cheap and easy approach to resolving. And what I'm going at here is the power steering system. I plan to do a flush in this particular video, mainly because, in my opinion, the power steering is just lacking some feedback. It seems almost too effortless when I turn. Now, when I got this car 3 years ago, it had, in my opinion, decent feedback and confidence when you drive it. Now, it's almost to where you turn the steering wheel any little bit and it just like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of weird. So there could be an underlying issue with the power steering pump, the rack and pinion, something with the lines in between, but it's definitely not leaking any fluid. And speaking of fluid, today we're going to take a stab at flushing the power steering fluid system. And at the end of this video, it's kind of going to be a bit random, but I'm going to have a little bonus install on this car. And I'm going to call it an upgrade. It's not really an upgrade whatsoever, but I think it's something that's kind of unique, and I think it's worthwhile to film, and some people might enjoy it. And one thing to mention, obviously I am wearing white. I don't intend to be crawling underneath the car. I don't plan to get grease all over myself, but I'm going to take the easiest approach that I know how to do with flushing out this system. There's probably 1,000 different ways to go about doing this, but this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to take you friends along for the journey. And before we do the flush, let me show you the most important part, and that's the fluid. Here is the fluid, some Pentosan CHF 202. Each one of these are 1 liter apiece. If you're wondering how I came up with that, well, in my owner's manual, this is a 2008 Saab 9.3 owner's manual. I don't know if the Aero and the regular are the same owner's manual, but they will vary between years. Mine is on page 215. Again, this is a 2008 car, 2008 owner's manual. So it calls for either CHF 11S or CHF 202. My parts store actually had both of those in stock, and for whatever reason, this 202 is cheaper than the 211S. They had both, but because this is cheaper and I figured I'd buy 2 of them, well, I got these 2 right here. $21.99 plus tax US, and I imagine most auto parts stores local around the world to you should have this in stock, if not be able to order it. So I picked up 2 liters just in case, because you don't know how much you'll use in a power steering flush. However, I believe the system only needs 1 liter. Again, 0893 Aero V6 2.8 liter turbo. Reservoir, very easy up top here on the passenger side of my US spec car. If you have a 4-cylinder, it would actually be right here on the driver's side of a US spec car, or in this configuration. Now, if you're wondering why I'm taking a stab at just replacing the fluid instead of some other parts, well, some of these other parts are very expensive. The power steering pump, you're not even going to be able to see into the darkness, but it's way down here. 1, it's not fun to replace, and 2, it's actually extremely expensive. There's a lot of aftermarket versions of it. However, they're definitely not as good as the original equipment. And then also the power steering rack and pinion underneath the car is also not a fun job and also can be pricey. So the easiest thing to take a stab at first is just to flush the fluid. And regardless of power steering fluid, brake fluid, coolant, you name it, all these fluids within this engine and the braking system and whatever else, they all have certain intervals, whether it be a couple years or X amount of miles, they recommend flushing and replacing. So I've owned this car for 3 years now and it has never been done. And what is important to note is that power steering fluid, just like brake fluid, is what's called hygroscopic. Hygroscopic is just simply, it will absorb moisture. So I'm wondering if this is my problem, to where it's old fluid and it's absorbed some moisture and it's lost its viscosity. So maybe it's traveling too fast through the power steering pump, or maybe it's just going through the different random passages of the rack and pinion too quickly, and I'm not having that, feedback and resistance like the car once had. So this is going to be the cheapest and easiest thing to try first, and if this doesn't work, well, I'll happily tell you, and then we'll go and try to diagnose down the line. But for now, we'll go ahead, get a little turkey baster, pop this guy off, and start sucking some fluid out of the system. Couple tools, I mean, nothing elaborate you'll need for this, but one thing that I like to use all the time is like a turkey baster or something similar to this. I don't even know where the heck I got this, but I'm sure you can find it all over Amazon, and if I do find one, I'll link it in the description. But what I'm actually gonna be using is one of these brake fluid pump kits. It's kind of a self-bleeder system whenever you're working on brake calipers yourself, but this way I can actually get down further than I can with this turkey baster style. Now, I could use some rubber hose on the end of it to kind of really extend the reach, but all I'm going to be doing is extracting the fluid from the reservoir, pouring it into, say, a drain pan, and then what I'm going to do is pour new fluid in here, cap it off, start the car, turn the wheels back and forth multiple times to kind of really circulate that fluid, and then pop the cap off. Do that multiple times until the fluid turns clear as possible. And what's super handy about this brake fluid pump is that it comes with a little collection guy. So we'll just stick it in here and we'll see how far we get. I mean, already you can see how nasty this fluid is. So I'm going to empty this, and then we'll go back and extract some more. Alright, so I think that's just about going to do it for what I can with this. Now I could go ahead and attempt putting a longer hose on here, but I don't think it's really necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and top this fluid off with fresh stuff, and then we'll go ahead and start the car, and we'll go on to the next process. Before we go ahead and pour the new stuff in, well, here's a quick comparison. The new stuff versus the old. Notice how like brown this stuff is. I don't even know if this is the correct stuff for the car, but you can kind of see in the light here, definitely looks nothing like the new stuff. Woo, shoot. Yeah, don't do that. Rookie mistake. Overfilling. So I jacked the vehicle up. I spared you the fun, exciting details of jacking the vehicle up and putting some jack stands underneath there. So I got 2 jack stands on the outside. I left the floor jack in the center just to kind of triangulate and keep things supported. And what I ended up doing was lifting the vehicle up off the ground so the wheels can freely turn back and forth. Now this isn't 100% required, it's kind of an extra step to do, but what this does is prevents excessive wear while you're turning the steering wheel back and forth, because that's how we're going to be basically bleeding the system and getting everything to circulate. And then once we're happy with doing that for a couple minutes, then I'm going to extract this fluid and then do the process all over again. Just note that you can do this on the ground, but the steering will be a lot harder to do and you can cause more wear and tear on the steering components. Think when you're in a parking lot and you're stopped and you're turning the steering wheel back and forth and you're not moving the vehicle, well, it's very difficult. And then once you start to go and then you turn the steering wheel, well, then it effortlessly kind of glides to where you need to go. So same kind of concept, but instead of moving forward, well, we have the vehicle up in the air. how dirty that still is? Got a long way to go. Alright, so that is a wrap. Flush it out multiple times, and then on this last go round I made sure it's topped off and make it nice and simple. You got an L for low, F for full. Right now I'm just about perfect, and there you can see that nice new kind of dark green. It's no longer brown. I still have some cleaning up to do because I got some residue all on this engine cover and my beautiful DO88 pipes. Now for the final results. At this distance you're probably asking, well, both those look pretty terrible. Well, let's go a little bit closer and hopefully you can see what I'm seeing. So the one on the left here, this is the before, and it's very brown. It looks almost like engine oil. Again, this car is used, so I don't know what the previous owner put in, but it definitely shouldn't look this brown, murky and gross. Now this is the new stuff, and it is a lot more green. So next to each other you can hopefully tell the difference. And it is pretty dark, but it is actually translucent so you can see through it. And this is one of the last flushes that I did. So no, this was not poured straight from the bottle. And you might be able to see down in there, but pretty much looks the same as if I were to put it just directly from the bottle into this container. But this is one of the last runs of flushing the system out. This was put through the vehicle and then extracted, and then new fluid put in and then topped off, and now I'm done. So big difference in close up looking, but from a distance obviously it looks kind of terrible either way. But I can guarantee you this is a lot better than that. And already without driving the vehicle, I can tell 100% honesty that it feels completely different, and already I can tell it has feedback back into the steering wheel like it once had before. So hopefully I'll be satisfied with that. If not, I'll keep poking around, seeing what I find. But I think this is going to do the trick. And if you're wondering, as far as part of the mess here, if you need 2 liters to do this job, I would say no. However, I highly suggest going with both. That way you have it. So to put in perspective, I ended up going through about 1 whole one and 3/4 of this other one. So I got about 4 flushes out of 1 bottle. And when I say flushes, it's extracting as much as physically possible out of this reservoir, filling it back up, starting the vehicle, turning the wheel back and forth for roughly 2 minutes, and then extracting that fluid and doing the process over again. So I did about 4 of those per 1 liter, and then I did another 3 of them on this one right here. So I did about 7 different flushes, and I left a little extra just in case I need to top off in the future. But just to put in perspective, you don't necessarily need both of these. However, I highly suggest getting them, as well as this little guy right here. This is that brake fluid flush pump, and that made a world of difference because it has this little collection cup, and I mean, regardless, you make a mess, but this made it so much simpler and took a lot less time to do versus using a small turkey baster. So as promised, there's one other bonus install that we'll be doing, and well, let me just show you what it is. And here is my little upgrade that I'm going to be finalizing the video with, and I know it's rather lame, but here I have some Aero branded door sill plates, and these are OEM 100% original equipment manufacturer. And then let me show you what is on the vehicle currently. This is a 2008 9.3 Aero, and both my 9.3 Aeros have just this lame, plain, matte black door sill. Nothing exciting whatsoever. And I wonder if these door sill plates are something just like my ISM, where I have a 1-year only light up ISM, that being a 2003. So I wonder if this is just something that was found on the older, say 2003, 2004 9.3s. I mean, somebody in the comment section, please let me know. These definitely are older versions, and it's kind of cool because there's some part numbers on here. There is a Vector version, part number right here, an Arc version, and of course this one being the Aero. So I wonder if this was only on the original new Gen 9.3s, and then the more modern 9.3s that had this would have been the Turbo X and the 9.3X. So Turbo X being an 08, and then the 9.3X I want to say like a 09, 10 maybe. But let me know in the comment section down below what these came on, because I think it's actually rather cool. It's something very simple. These weren't expensive. It was kind of difficult to find the Aero version, but I think it's a very unique little upgrade. So there's just 3 little plastic push pins, and if you were to break one, they just slide out like such, and it's literally all it is just one of these little guys right here. So we'll go ahead, use some trim removal tools, and we'll pop out these original ones real quick, and then toss these new little Aero branded ones in. Full disclaimer, I've never done this upgrade before, but it should be relatively simple. So lining up the new one, we get an idea of where the clips are. There's only 3 of them. So to start, I'm gonna try to get my hand underneath here, lift up, get the trim removal tool underneath this one, and then pop it up, and then hopefully do the same over here, and then kind of work my way to the metal. Okay, so for the center one, I think I'm just going to find the center and lift up. There we go. And here's what we have. So there's definitely some moisture underneath here, which is kind of interesting, but to be expected because the door sill's here. This is the outside, and then there's another, looks like just a simple door sill right there. So kind of to be expected, some moisture, so I'll clean that up. And we'll take a peek at the clips. So they are different. So what I'm going to end up doing here is transferring over the clips. So very simple, pops out like that. We'll toss that to the side. Here's the original one. That pops out, same like square style, and then that should slide right into there like that. So I'll go ahead and transfer these other 2 clips over and then clean this up. And we're ready to install the new Aero 1. Before we toss this new one in, one thing that's kind of interesting is these things look mirrored, look like they can go on either side. I mean, check this out. I mean, I think they can go on either side. There's no variation. That's the original one. You know, I mean, it's kind of crazy. So there is actually a left part number and a right. So this is the left part number. We have the Aero. We have the Vector, and then we have the Arc. Now going to the right hand, we have the Aero, we have the Vector, and then the Arc. So I will denote in the description the left versus the right, but quite honestly, I think it would work either side. New clips are in. Simply just kind of line it up here and then push down. Got 3 satisfying clicks. Kind of wipe this down a little bit. Some crud over here I need to clean up, but look at that. That's kind of cool. And I love it because that's the first thing you really see if you're looking down when you open up the door. Let me show you. Close the door. Now we're going to open it. Look at that. Wow. All right, I understand. It's not that exciting, but for me, I think that's kind of neat. And I think it's even more unique that the car didn't come with this. It's an original equipment part and I guess somewhat of an upgrade. So we'll go ahead and do the other side real quick and then we'll wrap this video up. there you have it. Passenger side complete. Easiest modification to do on your Saab 9.3. By far, that took less than probably 1 minute. So it is the next day. I've actually been driving the car around for a little bit. I'm in a parking spot. Let me just maneuver out of here real quick. Already, just by driving this car for, I don't know, roughly 5 miles maybe, I can already tell just by doing that fluid change, it has changed the dynamic of the steering completely. I mean, it's hard to grasp the change via YouTube and watching the video, obviously. Now, if this fluid flush didn't make a difference with my initial issue and the reason that led me to do this being, you know, the lack of feel in the steering, well, I would honestly report back. Not just making this up, it did in fact make a difference with the steering, and it has made a change for the better. Now, regardless if you have a pre-existing complaint like what I had, I think it's good to do after so many years or X amount of miles. And what that mileage is, I don't 100% know, but it's probably in the owner's manual. If not, a quick Google search will yield that. But regardless, I think it's very good to do. And in my case, it has fixed what I call as an issue, but realistically just a complaint. So with that being said, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop a comment down below, and I'll catch you friends next time.